There's multiple ways of actually measuring profit. So you care about your return, absolutely, but you also care about the risk factor of the deal. You want to have the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassle.
You're goddamn right.
Large profits are what motivates us to actually take on the risk of property investing. But are you considering all the factors before actually celebrating what you may think you've earned? Rob Flux, professional developer and head of PDN, Australia's largest property developer network, shares with us a breakdown of how you should be calculating your profits.
But in reality, I might have only got a 7% profit on GRV. Where I think a lot of people start to get it wrong is they look at pure cash profit. An agent's commission is an actual cost, but you don't pay for it until the revenue comes in. And my cash on cash is an infinite return because I put nothing in. So my secret sauce is...
So if you're serious about property investing and want to get the full picture on how to calculate your profits, this is the episode for you. I'm Todd Sloan. You're listening to the Pizza and Property Podcast, and this is my chat on calculating profits with Rob Flux. Rob Flux, how are you, mate?
I am fantastic.
Mate, it's good to have you back. We're talking about profit today.
Love profit.
Yeah, it's not bad, is it?
Well, if you can make it, that's the plan.
Yeah. But if you can calculate it and calculate it properly, then surely that's a better thing to have in your corner when you're doing some FISOs.
Have we heard of lies, and statistics?
No, open that up. No.
Oh, you can make any number work like anything.
Is that like the whole 76% of stats are made up on the spot?
Made up on the spot,
yeah.
Absolutely. So profitability is the same. There's multiple ways of actually measuring profit. And because of that, when you're asking someone, how much profit did you make? They can answer that in many, many ways. And unless you ask a very, very specific question, you don't know what version of profit they're giving you back.
Well, and that's exactly what I want to talk to you about today. How should we be actually calculating profit when we're looking at a property deal?
Well, there's multiple ways, and each bank, as silly as it sounds, will actually look at it differently, and your investors who might be investing in you will actually look at it differently as well. So you need to understand all the different ways of measuring it and pick the right answer for the right solution.
Okay, so each bank's going to look at it different. Each investor's going to look at it different.
Absolutely.
So it's not so much a wrong way or a right way total. It's a wrong and a right way situation dependent.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so what do you want to start with? The different ways or the different situations?
Well, let's firstly start with some definitions. So we're going to use some acronyms here. And so there's TLAs, 3-letter acronyms. We've got to go through all of those so people actually understand what we're talking about.
Okay, where do we start?
So GRV.
GRV?
Gross realised value. That is actually the total income from all the sales of the finished product that we're actually going to sell. So when we sell our finished product, whether it be land, whether it be townhouse, whether it be a brand new home, what is the revenue that's actually going to generate?
Okay.
So
GRV.
GRV.
Yep.
TDC, total development cost. So that is all of the costs that are both hard and soft cost. So a hard cost is cash that leaves your pocket today as you're running the deal. A soft cost is a cost that only comes out of your pocket when the revenue starts coming in. So an agent's commission, for example, is an actual cost, but you don't pay for it until the revenue comes in as part of that. So you're not cash flowing that along the way, but it's still a total development cost.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
All right, so after TDC, what's next?
Well, your project profit. So
PP,
project profit.
Okay.
So this is a real simple math equation. So GRV, gross realised value, minus TDC, total development cost, equals your project profit.
Makes perfect sense. All right.
Easy math.
Yep.
And that's where it all starts to go haywire. So from there, nothing becomes simple.
How so?
Well, because of the different ways of actually measuring it. Because there are, I guess, some banks will want to measure as a profit on the gross realised value. So how much profit you made versus the revenue that was generated from the project.
Okay.
Other banks will want to measure that as a percentage of the total development costs. So how much profit you made compared to the cost that you actually expended. So you need to understand which bank you're talking to and the language that they're actually talking in to give them the answer that they're actually looking for.
And how are you asking that question? Is it literally just how do you measure profit?
Yes. Are you measuring that as GRV or are you measuring that as TDC?
Gotcha. Okay.
Or give them both answers, let them work it out.
Okay, that's probably the safer way.
That's the way I do it.
Yep. Okay.
Because then I don't look silly asking silly questions.
Okay. So once we've understood what the bank actually wants to see as far as their profit, or just give them both options, what's next?
So then there's cash on cash return. So that is how much cash did I actually put into the deal in order to generate the profit out of it. So we've got a deposit that might go into the property. we've also got running costs to actually run the deal. So that's the cash I've actually put in versus the profit they're actually trying to get out. So if I'm an investor, I care about how much cash I put in versus how much profit I actually get back, or how much cash I get back, cash on cash return.
So I'm already seeing how this could kind of be not skewed, but I can see how you can probably get a false sense of security maybe using a cash on cash return when you shouldn't be looking at it that way. Like, because
well, I can have a project that I can say, what was your profit? And I say, well, it's a 50% profit, cash on cash.
That's what I mean.
I put 100K in, I got a 50K profit back. So I might got 150K back, my original 100 plus the 50K profit. So that's a 50% cash on cash return. But in reality, I might have only got a 7% profit on GRV or 6% profit on TDC.
Exactly what I'm thinking.
Right?
Okay. Yep.
So it's a, if I put no cash in because it was a no money down deal and I borrowed someone else's cash, then my cash on cash is an infinite return because I put nothing in.
Which sounds really good.
It's awesome.
A bit misleading.
So, and hence the problem, right? So it's really situational. What is the question? What is the context of the answer? And the problem is that we're not asking our questions correctly. We're not framing it correctly when we're asking it. And of course, everyone's going to give the best answer that sheds them in the best light.
Okay. And so where do we go from here then if we're wanting to really sharpen this as a skill?
Okay. So there's, I guess, learning the multiple ways of actually doing that. They're basic math equations. So if we want to do a percentage profit on GRV, then it's simple. What is our profit divided by the income or the gross realized value? Simple math. Okay. If we want to do a percentage profit on total development cost, again, the profit, which is the same profit between the two deals, but the total development cost is just the costs that we actually had running the project. And the cash on cash return is how much physical cash did I put into the deal? Now, we might be able to get a 10% deposit. We might be getting a 20% deposit. If we're using commercial terms, it might have to be a 30% deposit. So how much cash we actually put into it might vary significantly deal to deal. And then there's the cash to run the deal. So how much cash do we actually put in?
All right. So if you're the money partner, which one do you want to pay more attention to? The cash on cash return?
You want to pay attention to both. So you care about your return, absolutely, but you also care about the risk factor of the deal. So you want to make sure that the deal is genuinely a deal.
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. And if
you're not investing in a dud.
You're not investing in a dud, so you want to make sure the deal makes sense. And then, now that you know that the deal makes sense, what is your return based on that deal? Because now you know the level of risk in the deal. So now you've got some context as to whether or not that return is actually a good return.
Okay. And if you're the developer, again, same deal. You want to understand both sides of it as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this isn't really so much about people doing it wrong or right. It's just about where to place it.
Where to place it, how to interpret it, and the context that you're actually putting that in.
All right, Rob. So that's the way the banks are going to do it, or a money partner is maybe going to do it. Is there any other secret sauce that you can apply to this?
Yeah. So when we're looking at, I guess, the profitability of the deal, we tend to forget about time. So how long is the project actually going to take to actually run? So the bank cares that they're going to get their cash back. They don't really care how long it takes, because the longer it takes, the more I guess, interest they're going to calculate. So they don't really care, but I care. So when I'm comparing two projects, I want to say, well, if a project is going to take 12 months to run versus one that's going to take 24 months to run, how do I compare the two projects to see how hard is my money working? So I want to start to annualize the return. So my secret sauce is to say, well, let's divide it by the number of months the project is going to take, multiply it by 12, so then I get an annual return. And now I can compare one project versus another project and see whether or not my cash is working hard of one project compared to the other.
So if you've got, well, you're basically talking around if it's a 10% return, but it only takes you 6 months, that's not bad.
That's 20% annualized.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. So per year, you get a 20% annualized return. But if it's 20%, but it's taken you 4 years to get it, well, then really
that's a 5% return. That's terrible.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so when you're doing this then, where do you feel people usually go wrong? They just don't do it, or they're doing it incorrectly, or?
Well, I don't think they take into consideration the value of time at all. And also they're always trying to make themselves look good whenever they're answering a question, which is a very generic question. How much profit did you make? So they'll answer it with the highest percentage return, and quite often that's a cash-on-cash number.
The more I talk to you, Rob, the more I feel like, I mean, it's a good thing to do just anyway in life, I feel, but it's really like park the ego at the door and just like let the numbers do the talking. Because if the numbers are right, they'll stand up for themselves. And if you're attached to those numbers that have been put together that are right, it's like, well, that's the ego anyway. That's the win of like, look at what I've done. But you can really lie to yourself with the numbers if you want to do it like, the way that you're talking about.
And lie to everyone else too. But absolutely.
That's what I mean. And I don't even mean lie from a point of malice. I mean lie from a point of like, oh no, but this will work. And like just convincing yourself to chase something that shouldn't be chased.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I've got a scenario that I want to run past, which is kind of putting this into a real world context and actually putting some real math and comparing two projects against each other. And the two projects have exactly the same parameters that go into them. So the exact same purchase price, the exact same running cost to actually run the deal, the exact same profit. The only thing that changes is the time that the deals take. And so how the bank is going to look at it and how your investor is going to look at it and how you're going to look at it, you're going to take a different lens on the exact same numbers of the exact same deal, even though the time is the only variable that changes.
Okay, now we're going to be talking about a few numbers here. So just in case if you guys are on iTunes or Spotify, if you want to head on over to YouTube, I think we're going to have a few slides on the screen, but we'll try and make this as palatable as possible to go through. But
I'll try to talk slow and walk this through. It's just the one slide that we're actually going to go through, but I guess there's quite a bit of detail on the slide. So if we just paint the picture, so I'm going to try and keep the math really simple here. So that people at home can actually follow. So if we have a purchase price of a property of $1 million. Okay.
Nice and easy.
A typical 80% loan to value ratio. So it's going to be a 200K profit, 200K deposit, I should say.
Gotcha.
And an 800K borrowing.
Yep.
Okay. The project running cost, we'll just say, is a nice, clean, easy 100K to run. Okay. And for ease of math, we're going to say the GRV, the gross realised value, we're going to sell 2 vacant blocks of land at 600K each, so 1.2K worth of revenue. Okay, so we've got 1.2 mil in revenue and GRV. I'm following you so far. Yep. Now, if we do that, it's a simple equation to say, well, the profit is the 1.2 worth of revenue subtracted by the total development cost, which was the $1 million in, plus the 100K to run, so 1.1. So we got a 100K profit.
Yep. Okay.
Easy profit. But if I measure that against our profit on GRV, so it's a 100K profit, but our GRV was 1.2 million, that ends up being 8.3% of profit versus GRV. Okay. But if I measure it against TDC, total development cost, the total development cost was 1.1 mil, so 100K on 1.1 mil is 9.1%.
But if you measure that against COCR, cash on cash return, you're looking at 100%?
No, because we put the 200K deposit.
Oh, that's right, the deposit. I was thinking of the 100K cost.
Plus the 100K in. So we've got 300K cash with 100K profit.
So it's 33%?
33.3% return. Okay, so we've got the exact same, I guess, numbers have given us anywhere from 8.3% return to a 33% return, and all three answers are correct.
Yeah, this is good, Rob. Okay.
Now, if we then say the time value of that, so if this project took 6 months to run, what we want to do is we want to annualize those numbers. So if we annualize that, then because it's a 6-month deal, we're just going to double that effectively to turn that into 12 months. So our percentage profit on GRV instead of 8.3 is now going to be 16.6. Okay. Our percentage profit on cost, instead of being 9.1, it's now going to be 18.2. And our cash on cash return, instead of being 33.3, is now 66.6.
And when you're taking this to the bank, they're annualizing it as well?
No, they don't.
They don't do that at all.
They don't care about the annualized return. They care about, are you generating profit, and have you met their, depending upon their assessment criteria, is it a profit on GRV or a profit on TDC?
So whether you do it in a month or 12 months,
they don't care.
Don't care. Okay.
Right. Now, if we look at the exact same deal, the exact same parameters, and this time all we're changing is the time duration of that. This time we're going to say it's a 9-month deal instead of a 6-month deal. Okay. If we actually look at the profit, it's still a 100K profit. Nothing changes. So the bank is not going to see that any differently. If we look at a percentage profit on GRV, our revenue hasn't changed, our profit hasn't changed, so our percentage GRV hasn't changed.
Okay.
So it's still 8.3%.
Okay.
If we measure that as a profit on cost, our costs haven't changed, our profit hasn't changed, so it's still 9.1%. And if we measure that cash on cash return, it's still the 200K deposit plus the 100K.
So it's still 33.
Still 33.3.
Gotcha.
So the bank is going to assess it against all of that, and nothing changes so far as the bank's concerned. But the time variation here means that if I actually annualize that, then my percentage profit on GRV, instead of being 16.6, is actually now 11.1. So it's actually dropped significantly because it's taken extra time to actually do this. Our percentage profit on costs, instead of being 18.2, that's now dropped down to 12.1. And our percentage cash on cash return annualized, instead of being 66.6, is now 44.4. So when I compare the two deals, because of the time value, okay, the deal that takes less time is clearly my money working harder. So now I can start to use that methodology and say, well, I've got two non-identical deals, and I can annualize it and I go, well, how hard is my money working on a 2-year deal versus a 12-month deal?
Looking at this now, and I'm just thinking 6 months, 9 months, when someone talks about a velocity of return, this is literally like this is exactly what they're talking about, yeah? There's no difference in the velocity of return to what you're speaking of?
Well, how quickly the project is turning over.
It's just another terminology.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, okay.
Velocity of money is always something that we look, how quickly can we turn it over, how fast, how hard is it working?
I just always like to think of what questions someone might have if they're sitting on the train right now listening. And that's just the first one, because I always hear that thrown around.
Well, where I think a lot of people start to get it wrong is they look at the pure cash profit and they say, hey, I'm getting a 200K profit here or a 400K profit here, but they forget about that time value. Now, if they got a 200K profit, let's just do a hypothetical and say that the project took 12 months to sell it as vacant land, and it took 2 years by the time they built 2 homes on it. Now, did the first 12 months and the second 12 months, are they working as hard for each other? Now, if it's 200K for the land and 400K to sell the home, then the answer is yes, they're both halves of the project are the same. But if you only got 300K profit to sell the finished home, then clearly the first half of the project, your money was working harder. But for the second half of the project, you only made 100K. So you go, well, why would I wait that extra time? Because that extra hassle that I'm actually going through, the extra risk in that construction phase,
Not as profitable,
right? Now, that's one scenario, but if it goes the other way, if you got a 500K profit in that second half, then clearly it is worth going the extra.
waiting. Yeah.
It's worth waiting.
Rob, is there anything else that you wanted to sort of wrap things up with as far as how to calculate profit?
No, other than look at it from all angles and actually, if you do that annualized return, you're going to really understand one project versus another when you're comparing the two. If you've got 2 deals that land at the exact same time, which one do you want to take? You want to have the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassle. And the only way to work that out is your annualized return.
Rob Flux from Property Developer Network, thank you so much again for jumping on the show, mate.
All good. Thanks, folks.